Mr. President, there's been a long conversation about Yemen. Yemen's in a civil war. It's been a brutal civil war with a lot of civilians killed and a lot of damage to the country's interior. Of the 30 million people that are living in Yemen, 22 million currently need humanitarian assistance. We have over 8 million people that are what's called at risk of severe starvation. It is the largest cholera outbreak in the world right now, and their currency has plummeted in value. We have over 2 million people that are internally displaced just inside the country, that literally can't live at their house because of the war is around their house and they've had to flee from that spot. 2 million people. It's a terrible situation. But while this body is arguing about supporting, not supporting the Saudis, should we be around it, should we not be around it, our ambassador, the leadership of the UN, our United States military, who this body is arguing we shouldn't engage and help, is currently putting people at the negotiating table in Sweden. And for the past week, our military that this body is saying shouldn't be engaged has actually been the prime mover in getting all the same players to the table to negotiate. And just in the last few hours, the Secretary General of the UN, with the rebel leadership, with the legitimate leadership of Yemen in the civil war, have stepped out to make major announcements. The first major announcement they just released within the last hour was that they have committed to halting fighting around the seaport so humanitarian assistance can get in. Now, the Houthis have actually dominated the seaport and taken all the income from the seaport to be able to finance their fighters. Their weapons are coming from Iran. Their income is coming from the port because they've taken the port over. Now the UN is going to run the port. That's a dramatic shift. Revenues from the seaport will be deposited into a central bank, so when the rightful government, when this is all resolved, will actually get back to the people of Yemen. There'll be a release in fighting, a pullout in the major city around the seaport there. They've agreed that they're going to actually have a secondary meeting next month to be able to work out the final details to actually shut this down. So while this body is arguing about who should we take sides with, the Iranians or the Saudis, and that's really what this body is arguing about, which side we should be on, the Iranian side or the Saudi side, we're actually actively pushing the players to the table to resolve this. This is the worst possible moment for this body to start arguing about whose side should we be on. Now, I'm fully aware that the Saudis' humanitarian history is deplorable. The whole world praises them because they now allow women to drive. I mean, we're in that bad of a situation, of a humanitarian situation and of a human rights situation in Saudi Arabia. I'm fully aware of the murder of Khashoggi. I'm fully aware of what they've done in other areas. But the Saudis have been the only entity that have also done humanitarian aid into Yemen to be able to help assist this. Now, the United States, by far, is the largest donor to what's going on in the humanitarian crisis in Yemen. But the civil war is not our problem. This is a proxy fight between Saudi Arabia and Iran that's being fought right on Saudi Arabia's southern border in Yemen. We shouldn't take sides in this other than to stand up against Iran's aggression as they have moved into Iraq, as Iran has moved into Syria, as Iran has moved into Lebanon. We don't want to see Iran dominate the entire region. That destabilizes the region. But we do want to be able to bring peace to this region. So what should we do in this situation? I think we should speak with a very clear voice about the human rights violations of Saudi Arabia and call them out to be a part of the civilized world. But I think punishing the innocent civilians, casualties in Yemen is the wrong way to do it. We should speak out on the issue of Khashoggi. We should speak out for human rights in the entire region, but we should stand up to say, what can we do to be able to stop the fighting and protect civilians there? The best thing that we can do is to be able to be engaged with the Saudis, not selecting targets, not refueling their jets. We've already stopped all of that, but to be able to be a presence there. We forget as Americans, most of the world does not try to protect civilians in battle like we do. Most of the world just carpet bombs and destroys and burns down cities. You want a good example of that where America is not present? Look at Syria right now. and year after year of barrel bombs and of chemical weapons where Americans are out, we're not advising, and the destruction that's happening to the civilians. If we want to see even more of that in Yemen, then let's back us out entirely. If we want to give Iran the upper hand in the peace negotiations that are happening right now, then let's tell them through this body, we don't support the Saudis anymore, we support the Iranians who started this civil war in Yemen. The best thing that we can do is to give the peace negotiations the opportunity to be able to finish and to be able to go well. To support in every way that we can the protection of civilians in that region, and to be able to make sure that we're assisting with our advice on how to be able to protect them and how to be able to move forward. That's the best thing that we can do, not argue about whether we're going to pull out or not pull out or engage in Yemen or not engage. Let me be clear. Yemen's not our fight. That civil war is not our fight. But in the ungoverned spaces of Yemen, there's a group called Al-Qaeda in the Arabian Peninsula. They use those ungoverned spaces and they use the cover of the civil war to be able to actively recruit worldwide. The most aggressive part of Al-Qaeda that is directly pointed at the United States in planning attacks, in orchestrating attacks, in putting out information for lone wolf individuals all over the world of how to conduct attacks on airlines or in cities or in bus terminals. All of that originates from Al-Qaeda in the Arabian Peninsula in Yemen. So while the civil war off to the west is not our fight, though we do want to protect civilians and we do want to get humanitarian aid and we're helping with that, it is absolutely our fight to be able to take it to Al-Qaeda in the Arabian Peninsula. Houthi, the rightful leader of Yemen, has given us the authority to be able to take the fight to the terrorists there in his own country because he doesn't want Al-Qaeda in his country either. And as long as we're working with Houthi as the rightful leader, he has given us the go-ahead to fight against Al-Qaeda in the Arabian Peninsula. And we should for our own security. So I understand the politics of this, and I understand the messaging saying that we shouldn't have all of these things and give this picture of us pulling out of Yemen for humanitarian reasons. But the fact is, the humanitarian assistance is going in because we're there. The fact is, we're helping reduce civilian casualties in that area, not increasing them. And the fact is, the terrorist group Al-Qaeda in the Arabian Peninsula, the most aggressive group against us from Al-Qaeda, lives right there in Yemen. And we should be able to take the fight to them before they bring it to us again. These are difficult issues. There's no simple solution in any of these, and I get that. And it's a very messy civil war. But the last thing that we should do is just pretend our disengagement protects civilians. It does not. Mr. President, I have a unanimous consent request that's coming up that is currently in conversation to try to figure out how to be able to bring it to the floor as well. I see there's some other speakers that are here on the floor that are ready to be able to speak. I'd like the ability to be able to yield the floor to others that would want to be able to speak and then to be able to speak again in a moment on a unanimous consent request. With that, I would yield the floor.